Are you a seven-figure practice owner that wants to do more without burning out? Join us for the Seven-Figure Practice Retreat, a luxury mastermind where high-level practice owners step away from the day-to-day to build systems, strategy, and freedom in the Dominican Republic. This February, spots are limited, so apply now, and our sponsors are covering 95% of the cost over at practiceofthepractice.com/7. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/7. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1264. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I'm so excited to be hanging out with you today. If you don't know, we just rebranded our membership community and we're adding a bunch of new things in there. The Practice Academy is now live over at practiceofthepractice.com/membership. You can read all about our 3 tracks, whether you're in solo practice, starting a group, or in group practice. We have a track for you. We have live events 3 times a week, and it's just amazing to see how many people are jumping in there. So if you are interested in being in community with other people and getting consulting and live help to get to that next level, check out the Practice Academy. Well, I'm so excited to have Jayson Gaddis with me today. Jayson is a relationship expert, author, and founder of The Relationship School, where he helps people create deeper and more secure connections. He's the host of the Relationship School podcast with millions of downloads and the author of Getting to Zero, a powerful guide to resolving conflict in relationships without running away or shutting down. Jayson, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thanks, Joe. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. It's, when we overcome tech snafus, I feel a certain sense of we did it. It was like a team building activity getting us here.
Seriously. Yeah, you're helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's just start with relationships. I know one area that you dig into is particularly with family, kids, kind of love life. Let's start with, I'm raising 2 daughters. They're 14 and 10. I'm a primarily single parent. I have 80% custody. What do parents need to know about raising daughters?
Wow. Well, I've got a daughter. She's 14. My son is 16. And I think these days it seems like the social media conversation needs to happen really early. Screens and social media, because it's most often girls, it seems like, that are hurt on social media and then go into a lot of comparison, and it just fuels the fire of disconnection and I'm not okay as I am and all those things. So yeah, I think it's really about parents' boundaries and prioritizing connection first over screen time, and getting very good at that for many, many years. And I'm just with Jonathan Haidt's work around, no phones till smartphones till 14 and no social media till 16.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit more about that. Why? Because I think so my daughter had a smartphone, I think at 12. So it felt like there was all the kids' conversations and weekend planning and all that was going through texting. Tell me about kind of waiting till 14.
Yeah. Look, we can give them to kids whatever age we want, but there's going to be a cost. The younger we give a kid a screen or an iPad, the more addicted I think they're going to be. And I think 14 is, Jonathan Haidt says, look, there's quite a bit of research now on the older a child is and the longer we wait, the better outcomes basically for mental health. And that also gives us tons of time to be creative with how we connect. I just think it's parents who are overwhelmed and busy that want to break. The screen is a nice pacifier where they don't have to get childcare, and so it's understandable. But I just think I don't like what I see out there in the world, and I just want to protect our kids, in that way.
And tell me about the social media 16.
Yeah, so he says social media 16. I agree with that. Our son had no social media until he was 16, and he didn't get a phone until he was, I think we gave him a pinwheel phone, which is not a smartphone, at 13. So he could just text and call. And social media at 16, it's just like, man, you get on TikTok, dude, get on Snapchat, as you know, just get on anything, Instagram. Within days, the algorithm is feeding you stuff that you're not even signed up for. and it's all, addictive sort of, I just want to keep scrolling kind of stuff, but then I feel terrible about myself. And, I just don't think it's a good idea. And when I'm in public places and airports and I just look at teenagers and little kids even hunched over their phones and not looking at each other and not looking at airplanes passing by and not like being curious about the world around them and not having to learn how to navigate people and make eye contact. I just think it's really problematic.
Yeah. For me, one thing I thought about a number of years ago, and this was when I was getting interviewed on quite a few podcasts for my book, but we'd get into parenting stuff, is kind of like, what is my approach to parenting and why do I feel like it works for me? One thing I thought about is, my parents, what they gave me as a child, I probably have like 3 to 5 main like core values or core lessons that I took out of childhood. And, there was, 18 years of love, 18 years of, taking care of me, ups and downs, all of that, no major trauma type things. But it's like, being, kind of loved for what you do. I remember my star chart when I was like 4, I started to associate what I do with being associated with if I'm loved. And I don't think my parents conscientiously said, we want to teach that to Joe. But that's one of the lessons that I got. And so thinking about just like, what are the lessons that I want my daughters to take, then helps me define like, what is it that I want, them to go into adulthood knowing. And one of those lessons is being able to talk with anybody. So when I think about AI, when I think about social media, anything, if they can't have a face-to-face conversation and relate with a person, that's going to be problematic for them. And it's also going to open doors for them. And so when we go into situations where they're likely to meet new people, we talk about, okay, how do you shake hands? How do you look at them in the eye? What are some questions you could ask anybody, about their summer, about like what they're into, their hobbies, like, you're retired. What did you used to do for your job? Like just being able to sit down with a 75-year-old person that they just met and be able to have a conversation. And so that's for me a value of thinking through, like, what is it I want them to take into adulthood? Are there any things like that for you with your kids that you think through in regards to how you intentionally parent?
Yeah, 2 come to mind. One is very similar to yours, which is just prioritizing relationships and being able to make eye contact, have a firm handshake, take an interest in other people, be relational, and be collaborative. So if you're on a team, you help out. If you're part of a group, you support the other kids in the group. You don't just, click off and do your one thing with your best friend. You include everybody, or you be as inclusive as you can. Just be considerate and kind, and you actually care about the impact of your behavior on others. So that's the first one, is just being a relational person. And then the second one would be doing hard things. I think in this day and age, there's a lot of fragilizing, especially with privileged kids, to the point where they can't do hard things. And parents are like, well, Johnny's kind of sensitive and we wouldn't want to upset him. And so a lot of parents are tiptoeing around their kids' emotions around the home. And then the kids' emotions are kind of running the house, which I think is a real problem. So, we make our kids do chores. We make them do hard physical things, make them be on teams and be physically active, that kind of stuff. And going to the gym, et cetera, just like getting comfortable with like, I can handle hard things. And I just think that develops a lot of self-confidence in young people.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about kind of your training for coaches. So you've trained over 100,000 people with your online program, Present-Centered Relationship Coaching, over 8 million downloads with your podcast. You won Best Leadership and Business Book on Amazon, Wall Street Journal best-selling author. When you start to have that big of kind of a macro, like the ability to talk to a lot of people, I think you start to notice trends differently than maybe if you're in the one-on-one coaching or one-on-one counseling. So what are you seeing shift in the coaching world? It could be questions people are asking they didn't used to ask, issues that they're having come up. What are you seeing kind of shift in that market?
Yeah, first, just to clarify, one of the sort of facts you read there is I definitely haven't trained 100,000 coaches. That would be absurd, but it's more like 100,000 people have taken a course or some kind of product from me
Okay.
over many
Still
years.
a lot of people, but thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, and we've trained a few hundred coaches from all over the world, so it's in the hundreds here. Yeah, just want to be clear. And then in terms of trends, I'm noticing, I think people are, especially a most recent trend is this AI stuff, right? I have my AI therapist, my AI coach, so why do I need a person? And obviously, I think you and I both know that there's a lot of strengths to having an AI kind of coach, like just give you amazing feedback from a Jungian perspective or from you can any perspective like you want. Tell me about myself and my dreams. And it's fun. Especially if you like personal growth and you like studying yourself. But at the end of the day, we still have to go lift the weights. We still have to sit in front of a person and try to help them with their life. We still have to deal with our relationships at home. Real human beings and relationships, high stakes relationships can be very hard. So I think what I'm saying is I notice a trend of a little bit of apathy around connection again, just human connection. But also at the same time, I think the value of in-person experiences are going up. So I just think a lot of us have Zoom fatigue. And now we have AI, and so we can just continually be in front of our computer all day. But I think a lot of us long for and really appreciate and cherish these, like an in-person wedding or an in-person training, where we actually get to hug each other and sit in a room together and cry and laugh. I think that's the value of that is going up, is what I see in people's behavior.
Yeah, we definitely saw that when we hosted the group practice conference back in May, and we're hosting it again in May, of people just saying how much they would rather be around a small group of people that are kind of headed in the same direction in person than kind of these mega conferences or even just like, a small group online. And just that idea of like, let's do things in person together.
Yeah, I'm curious. Are you noticing a similar trend, or what are you noticing?
Yeah, we're putting on an event in February for 7-figure practice owners down in the Dominican Republic for like a 30-person retreat. We're seeing people really interested in that. I think that it's like people. I think there's a mixture I'm seeing of people not wanting their time wasted, but also really wanting to put time into the things that really have the best ROI for what they want. And so not just business, but, if I'm going to even, go over to someone's house for dinner, like, is that somebody that I want to develop a deeper relationship with? Is that worth it? I think the pandemic kind of taught us all, we don't have to put up with the BS of the world and just like go through the motions. We can actually say, no, like, I want to work from home and have comfy pants on and just have my sweater look nice. It's like so a lot more autonomy, but I don't also think that blueprint isn't yet set. And so in the same way that I think we see millennials, marrying less, there's also not a blueprint for, well, what does that kind of relationship look like then? Gen Xers and, elder millennials had a very clear kind of step ladder for relationships. And if we're going to deconstruct, that way of thinking, which I think deserves critique, then it's like, well, okay, what's left? So I think a lot of it's this choose your own adventure, and people are just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall without having blueprints for what that looks like. Yeah,
that's fair. Totally. Yeah.
No, when you mentioned something in there that I kind of want to underline of like enhancing the human connection. We have almost all therapists that listen to this show. We have a handful of coaches, but mostly, mental health clinicians. What do you wish that they would be teaching their clients, or what kind of discussions do you wish they were having around connection, around just building that community in someone's life?
Yeah, I think a number of things. They can be, and a lot of your listeners are probably already doing this, is just reinforcing how vital connection is, especially deep connection, to our mental health and our well-being and our longevity. There's so much research now on people living longer because they have secure relationships, because they feel like they belong and they're well connected. And then helping clients to kind of differentiate between belonging and actually feeling known, like deeply seen. There's a real difference than, I'm just a part of a group, but no one really knows me. Like I was part of a ton of those groups in my 20s where I belonged. So I had belonging, but I felt very alone because no one knew me. So I think we have to remind our clients there's a difference there. And then the other thing that we can do, of course, by living it, is get our relationship house in order as clinicians, as practitioners. The more we can get our own relationship style, because most people, like, just because you're a therapist, it doesn't mean you should be better at this. Relationships are hard, especially if you have a trauma history and you grew up in a insecurely attached family system or with a high ACEs score. You're going to have a hard time in adult relationships. So, always working on your own material and then really sharing what you learn with your clients, not from a place of superiority, but, for example, becoming a teacher with our clients about how to repair a conflict. And that's why I wrote a 300-page book on repair, is because it's like the vital skill I think every therapist should be teaching their clients. But the therapist needs to live that in their own life to be, congruent and even more effective. So that's a big one that I would love to see more of. Mm.
Something always comes up when you're running a private practice. Well, Gusto's payroll and HR services can make it a little easier. Gusto was designed for you, the small business owner. They take the pain out of running a business, automatically calculating paychecks, filing payroll taxes, setting up open enrollment. Gusto does it all. Want more? Time tracking, health insurance, 401k, onboarding, commuter benefits, offer letters, access to HR experts. You get the idea. With Gusto, you can focus on the joy of running your business. It's super easy to set up and get started. And if you're moving from another provider, Gusto can transfer all the data for you. It's no surprise 99% of businesses said the value they get for Gusto is worth the price. And here's the best part. Because you're a listener, you get 3 months totally free. All you have to do is go to gusto.com/Joe. Again, that's gusto.com/Joe. I'm telling you, you're going to love Gusto. Get started today. And Jayson, personally for you, like, what does that look like to develop deeper relationships, repair? How does that manifest in your own life?
Yeah, I feel really blessed because I have a very deep bond with my wife. She's a therapist, of course. I'm a former therapist turned coach, entrepreneur. And we just spend hours talking about people and talking about ourselves and just analyzing life. And for us, it's like a spiritual experience to connect deeply and to talk about humans and how we are together. So we're very curious people. And then I've been in a men's group off and on for 20 years that I have a lot of deep male friendships. And we're just talking about the truth, right? Like, one of us is having a divorce, and one of us is in an affair, and one of us is healing from financial ruin. One of us, there's always some challenge going on, and we're really there to talk about it and work through it and be honest about it. I just think my relationship life is very satisfying when I'm around people who want to be real and honest. There's a real difference, right? Versus going to my old college friend's house or my family of origin, where we kind of talk about nothing, or we just reminisce about old times. That's, for me, is very draining and not nourishing. So I just want to be around people that want to talk about the real stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Now, you've talked openly about kind of psychedelics and parenting and life. How would you frame out how you're thinking about psychedelics right now?
Yeah, I wrote a big post on this recently that I'm a fan and I'm a critic. So I know those two don't always go together. I started experimenting when I was 19, and honestly, psychedelics helped me kind of crack through the strategy and the facade that I was presenting the world early on, and it helped me get on the personal growth path. So I'm really grateful for psychedelics in that way. And I misuse them a lot without set and setting and no facilitation and, just left on my own, like all kinds of problematic psychedelic behaviors. And then there's this whole underground psychedelic scene now that is, it's fine, but so many people are all about the high of the journey. And then they talk about integration, but they don't do it that well. And my critique is, look, if you're using psychedelics to develop yourself over time, like become a mature adult, for example, that's a good use of psychedelics, and you have tangible evidence that change is really happening in your life, great. Keep doing them once a year or once a quarter or whatever works in the setting the proper way, of course. Good facilitation and safety and all the things. But too often here in Boulder, Colorado, I see, everybody's a psychedelic facilitator these days. And people are, in my opinion, they're just getting high. And their marriage is a mess. Their relationship with their kids is strained, and it's not actually improving. That tells me, why are you doing psychedelics? You need to go do like trauma therapy, or you need to go get in a group where you get some feedback on how you're showing up in your life, so that you can start changing your daily behaviors and your actions. So I'm a fan, especially if they're used for development, and I'm a critic when I just see too often people are just getting high.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, if you were to have it be more on the development side, what would that look like?
Yeah, so really good pre and post work around what your intention is, and the post work is like, cool, how are you going to implement this in your life every day for the rest of your life? For example, repair. How are you going to repair with your husband or wife effectively after this journey, now that you saw that, wow, you really have, kind of a block here? We need to see that your marriage actually improves in 6 months. And your communication skills are tangibly different, and you feel different, and you feel more confident. Even if the relationship tanks, you feel like you're putting your best effort forward, and have deeply improved as a communicator, as a listener. So if we interviewed your partner or the ex-partner, they would say, yeah, they really tried, and they improved a lot. I felt really understood by them. That's evidence, right? So lots of kind of follow-up sessions, maybe being a part of a group, getting into some kind of accountability group where it continues. And then we just see development over time.
Mm-hmm. I think what I've seen as we've now done 2 pretty large psychedelic series on this podcast. So there's probably 20 or 30 episodes that people can go back to. What I've seen as be one of the critiques / issues is access, where if you want someone that's highly trained, whether that's a therapist that also has psychedelic assisted therapy training, that training alone oftentimes is, $10,000 for that therapist to go through, to get good quality training. So you get someone that's highly trained beyond their master's degree. And then it's like, it is best practice to do what you're saying, the pre, post, follow-up, accountability groups, all of that. But then when you're looking at, okay, we've got therapist-led groups for 8 people, and then the cost associated with that for that therapist to be able to have a living wage, it gets really expensive to say, okay, this one journey, the actual time of that, plus then we add on an extra 20 hours of therapeutic facilitation to have that solid just approach.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have the money for that. Insurances aren't necessarily covering that. Or you're seeing people that are, calling it group therapy and billing insurance, but really it's like psychedelic assisted, after therapy. And so how do you think through just the access side and just how expensive that could get for people? Or should it be volunteer, or how are you thinking through that side of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't think a lot about it because I don't do it. I don't facilitate psychedelic assisted psychotherapy or coaching. I refer people to people, and I don't think it's for relational development. It's just another tool in the toolbox, just like pharmacology or just like CBT or something. It can be helpful for some people some of the time. So if we're sort of taking this, it's for everybody and everybody needs access. I just don't agree. Yeah. And some of us have gotten very far without psychedelics in our life and done just fine in terms of our personal development journey. So I don't know. I mean, ideally, one day MDMA assisted psychotherapy is legal and insurance covers it, and it's for people with no money can go participate to heal their PTSD. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get back to coaching because that's one of the things that I think a lot of therapists are like, well, should I become a coach? Should I, have
Yeah.
coaching be part of my practice? What does that even look like when you're a licensed therapist that also maybe, you're licensed in Michigan in my case, but then you're doing coaching nationwide. And it's like, well, are you just doing that to kind of provide therapy nationwide, but it's under coaching? There's a lot that kind of gets jumbled together in the coaching world and the therapy world. What do you think should be untangled with all of that?
Yeah, well, first of all, you want to do your due diligence, and I did do this many years ago because I'm a, former therapist and a coach, and my wife is both a therapist and a coach, licensed in the state of Colorado, and a coach that can see people anywhere. So she basically has two businesses and two separate pieces of paperwork. She went to an attorney that we both use to tease out the paperwork so it's really clear. And of course, you and I both know there's a lot of overlap. So it's not like that clear cut in black and white. There's fuzzy areas. And in our paperwork in particular, we want to be really clear that a coach does not do diagnosing. They're not doing mental health treatment. They're not treating addictions. They're not doing eating disorder stuff. They're not, sequencing trauma because unless they have a course of deep trauma training, and on and on. So it's really good to just clarify what you do and what you don't do. And I refer plenty of people to therapists who have far more training than me around, say, trauma. And I don't want to deal with trauma. I don't want to do PTSD, SE work with people who are severely traumatized. I got really clear on that many years ago. So I refer that to other people. So therapists each need to know what their own boundaries are and get your paperwork house in order. And there's a lot of advantages to coaching, especially like if you specialize in, say, relationship coaching, which is obviously what I do and what I train people in. There's so much interesting, fun stuff you can do that, doesn't have to overlap into any kind of therapeutic thing. And coaching I really like because we spend less time on what happened to us and more time on what we're going to do about it. And what we're going to do with our life moving forward. We're going to set goals. There's going to be accountability. And again, I'm all about results. I want to see change. And that's all I'm focused on is this person changing? And that's very coachy. And I just really like that kind of frame.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was part of the therapy world that I had a tough time with was, I have these clients that kept going back to this old story. And it's like they just wanted to tell the story over and over in therapy rather than like that. Yes, we need to know our story. We need to work on our past traumas. All of that's important. And, if you're still 50 and you're blaming everything on your parents, right. You've had a lot of time you haven't been living with your parents. And like, what are you doing to change that situation? And obviously I could be minimizing people's trauma and that's not my intention. But no, I like that side of coaching and I'm definitely drawn to that. Jayson, the last question I always ask on the show is if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
That'd be so cool. Thanks for the opportunity here. I'd say thank you. Just thanks. We're in a really, really intense time right now. And I just appreciate you being a person of living a life of service that is really trying to make a difference and get us more connected to ourselves and each other. Big respect. It's not an easy job always. And we humans have a lot of problems and you're doing something about it. You're trying to help. So thank you.
So awesome. Jayson, if people want to follow you on your website, sign up for your program, read your books, listen to the podcast, where should we send them?
I think the easiest place is, I'll say two places, relationshipschool.com. That's where you can find out about our training, my book, etc. Or if you want to follow me on social, you can go to @Jayson Gaddis, and that's Jayson with a Y on Instagram or YouTube or wherever.
So awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Joe. It's a pleasure.
As Jayson talks about just being in community, being around people, having relationships, that's the core thing in the Practice Academy. We want you to have access to people that are at your same phase, that are ahead of you, maybe behind you. Just today, I was leading a webinar for people going from solo into group, and the 4 people on the panel are all people that a year ago were in that webinar, that they're just a year ahead of these folks. And we want to connect you with people that are at your phase and have you be inspired by people that are just a few steps ahead of you. That's what the Practice Academy is all about, getting you around the right people to save you time, to help you with implementation so that you're not just gathering information from everywhere. So if that sounds good, head on over to practiceofthepractice.com/membership and sign up for the Practice Academy today. We would love to see you in there. Today's episode was sponsored by Gusto. Gusto is who we use for our payroll solutions. I absolutely love it because it helps do all the taxes and file everything, and I don't have to worry about having a whole accounting team or bookkeeping team that's doing that payroll. So try gusto.com/Joe. You're going to get 3 months totally free. It's going to help you with your payroll and so many other things like doing open enrollment, filing payroll taxes, calculating paychecks, all that sort of stuff you can do with Gusto. Again, that's gusto.com/Joe. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.